We've been following the development of Chinese art through the dynasties, the succession of dynasties. So in the period of disunity, we saw that there is a growing prestige and philosophical depth that's attributed to the arts of the brush. We've been looking at painting, poetry, calligraphy, and that's going to continue into the coming Tang and Song dynasties. The other major development that we see in this period of disunity that's going to have a massive influence going forward is the growth of Buddhism and Buddhist art becoming important, as Buddhism will become what is often called the third great philosophy of China. So we see this magnificent yet small sculpture of Buddha, 338, as a marker of that influence. So the textbook introduces this topic, Buddhist art and architecture, but in order to really understand the kind of art and architecture we're going to see, we also have to pause for a moment and see how Buddhism has evolved, grown, expanded, changed. We need to actually go back for a moment to our chapter on the art of South and Southeast Asia to see a detail, an important detail about Buddhism. So you have learned about Siddhartha, also known as Shakyamuni Buddha, the founder of Buddhism, although he didn't think of himself as founding Buddhism, but rather awakening, which is what Buddha means, an awakened one, and teaching the path to awakening. As the textbook explained, key elements of Buddhism. They make the important point, a Buddha is not a god. Siddhartha was a human being, although we remember that when he was seen on the road after his awakening, he said, I am not a god, I am not a celestial being, I am not a man, I am awake. So here in this final paragraph, they're explaining how Buddhism branches off into different schools. So the early form of Buddhism, known as Theravada, stresses self-cultivation. It is also called the path of the elders, a focus on really the essential path that Siddhartha took. Along with Theravada, as Buddhism developed and spread out, we get a second form known as Mahayana. And Mahayana will flourish in China, Korea, Japan, and Tibet. The form it takes in Tibet is known as Vajrayana. So there's some important new aspects of Buddhism in its Mahayana form. So here I'm wanting to help you by visualizing these two schools, Theravada, the way of the elders, and Mahayana can be literally translated as Maha, great or big. It's related to our word major, which is really the big ox cart because it's got a big, expansive set of ideas. So I'm relating that to geography. Theravada, its basic geographical focus areas are Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Burma, or also known as Myanmar today. Mahayana is focused more on the northern and the eastern regions here, so Tibet, China, Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. I don't want to overstate the difference. I'm going to be looking at some significant differences, but I want to quote a famous Buddhist teacher, Dr. Rahula, who says, I have studied Mahayana for many years, and the more I study it, the more I find there is hardly any difference between Theravada and Mahayana with regard to the fundamental teachings. Both accept Shakyamuni Buddha as the teacher. The Four Noble Truths are exactly the same in both schools. The Eightfold Path is exactly the same in both schools. So keep that in mind, because I'm going to talk a little bit about some distinct elements of Mahayana. So in Mahayana, the great vehicle or big ox cart, it's expanded because now we have the concept of Buddhas plural, multiple Buddhas. So let's examine that. This involves the idea that there was the historical Buddha, capital B, Buddha, as Siddhartha Gautama Shakyamuni is known, versus the concept of a Buddha, which probably should be lowercase, actually. Let me fix that. Lowercase to differentiate from Siddhartha, the center point. The idea here is that in the endless expanse of time and space, there must have been and will be additional Buddhas, since the path is accessible to all who take it. So a Buddha is anyone at any point in time before our historical time or time to come who has a completely enlightened mind and heart. Another related concept is the bodhisattva, as a very important ideal along with the Buddhas. So this is a wonderful painting of a bodhisattva from the Ajanta caves in India. This is Avalokiteshvara, also known as Padmapani, who is a being of infinite compassion, on the threshold of awakening, like 99.9% a Buddha. But this is a bodhisattva, is someone who vows to await for nirvana until all beings are liberated. So the bodhisattva becomes a kind of intercessionary figure, someone who seems to be still slightly connected to this world and very compassionately available as a figure of solace and salvation. So what's interesting in terms of the art is we will see that bodhisattvas have a slightly different iconography. We will see artworks such as this marvelous Korean sculpture and this amazing Chinese sculpture that's coming up soon. And we will see that they actually wear princely garments. So, this is a high fashion, almost enlightened being, right? Not the kind of simple robes of Siddhartha, who was an ascetic, a renunciate. So they are also often shown wearing elaborate headdresses, crowns, because we understand them to be princely in this is called the posture of royal ease, rather than the lotus posture that we typically see Buddha in, because we understand that they have not yet taken off the earrings, right, and completely renounced this world.